in the Q&A, sometimes I affectionately call this, especially on a holiday, the virtual insane asylum. Tom, questions that you have or additional thoughts?
No, not at this time. I'm anxious to hear what everybody else thought about it.
Cool. Paul, your thoughts?
It's a pretty cool model. It's really simple. So I like that it's really simple. So Tom, is it possible just to give a quick example of what a possible sacrifice, obstacle sacrifice, what that would look like in a business setting?
Well, I guess in any business setting, as you're sitting down, you have a limited amount of resource, both in people, time, and money. And so as a decision maker in a business, you have to sit down and make those decisions as to how do I deploy the people that I have against the plan that I want to accomplish. What's the time level that I have to commit to, not only for myself but the people in the organization, and is it worth it to me to do that? And then the money resource, does it require money to make that happen? If it does, am I willing to cut that portion of the money out of the budget that I have to accomplish this goal I'm looking for? Did that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Another example, Paul, would be like when I was 26 years old and I resigned from a position at $460,000 a year and started my own company to pursue my life vision with 3 kids. Or when I went ahead and so I made sacrifices, there was risk. Like, I'm going to have to give up a lot. Or when I took my first job out of college, I had 6 job offers, and the one I took was 100% straight commission. And my wife having to make sacrifices where we bought a house, which was pretty cool, but we didn't have enough money to put curtains up on the house, so she put bed sheets up on the house, on the windows. Or when we built that from no kids to 5 kids in a little 3-bedroom ranch house, no basement, and we had the money where we could have upgraded our home to something much, much nicer, but for probably 3 years, we kept in that little 3-bedroom ranch rather than because the company needed the money. And she never complained once about it. She never, she's like, it was fine. You know what the strangest thing is, Paul, about that?
No.
About 3 years later, we move into this huge home. Like all the kids could have their own bedroom with this huge lot. And guess what all the kids wanted to do all the time?
Hang out in the family room.
Right. They wanted to all sleep. Can we sleep in the family room all together? Like, what? And so there's just so many things. And so this is where in EC2, Engineered Clarity Community, like discovering one's life vision and then what sacrifices are you going to have to make to go ahead and pursue that life vision every single day.
So what if the answer is no? What if there's a sacrifice that somebody is not willing to do? Does that mean it's the wrong goal or the wrong?
It means you won't. No matter how hard you try, you're probably not going to achieve that outcome. It's interesting. I was sitting here thinking back on the times that I've used this, especially in business. And the one thing that it did for me was a lot of times you don't go through that second, third, and fourth step when you're identifying something that you're going to do in your business. You decide this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it, and who's going to do it, and then away you go. And then all of a sudden you're out there and you've spent time, energy, and money, and all of a sudden you find out that something's not going to allow that to work. So but you could short circuit that if you'd have gone and done this model in the beginning, and you would have known that, that obstacle we're not going to be able to get over. And so now I got to go back and decide is there some subset of that want that I might be able to make the model work for me. Does that make any sense to you?
Oh yeah, Why go through all the gyrations when I don't have the people resources? It's a problem I can't overcome today, but maybe I can overcome it next time.
Right.
So, Tom, I didn't ask permission to share this story, so we don't have to get into it if you don't want. But we were talking Tuesday, a couple days ago, and I'd shared with you that there's, I think, 3 times in our, 12, 15 years of friendship that you've had tears. One was, with, where you kind of teared up about about Century 21 and how all the owners kicked in to keep another owner from dying or from business dying, and so that was once. The second time was at in Easter Seals in Wisconsin when you're talking about the kids and the impact of the children. And I'm guessing, Tom, you may not remember the third time.
You're absolutely right. I know.
So
this is pretty easy for me to tear up now, so something about age.
Right. So the third time, and I don't know, I think this was 5, 6, 7 years ago. It was quite a while back, where you were talking and reflecting about the pressures of being the president of the largest real estate franchise in the world, over 140,000 agents in over 70 different countries. Paul was saying, he and I were talking yesterday on the Speakers Mastermind group. He's like, Mark, you don't give Tom justice. I'm like, I know. He's like, I didn't realize what he did. I'm like, yeah, I know. Like, pretty spectacular. And you were talking about traveling all over the world and doing all these things, and then you all of a sudden teared up and choked up about the sacrifice that your kids had made.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, I remember 4 or 5 years ago, we were on a call, and you caught me off guard, and you said to everybody on the call, you said, nobody understands the sacrifice that Mark's wife, Rosanna, and his 7 kids have made to bring us what we have today. And I just lost it. I mean, I had to put it on mute. I was crying. I'm like, oh my gracious, like people, they don't understand. Rosanna, 35 years of marriage, first time in 35 years we have not been together, and last Thanksgiving was really rough on us, but we were together, but it was really rough, going through some really tough things family-wise. I mean, really brutal things. This Thanksgiving, we're apart and more in love now than we've ever been before. I am missing you so much. What's it like to be married to an entrepreneur? What's it like to be married to someone that's got a vision that I do? What are some thoughts, insights you have, Rosanna?
Well, being married to an entrepreneur is a very interesting experience in itself because there's always something new that you're learning as you're going through the process. There is watching your spouse see things that you don't see, It's also allowing mistakes to be made. It's allowing some freedom. It's allowing time to see growth. There's times you go, are we sure we're doing the right thing? Is there be enough money? There's also times it says, this is really cool. You made a sale. Awesome. So I guess that's where I see it. It's a growing experience along with your spouse.
And are 4 of the grandkids with you right now? Are they still hanging with Grandpa or not so much?
There, in the background, in fact, Daniel had been sitting at the computer, watching the screen, copying it into his journal that he had in front of him with a pen, and that was all on his own.
Daniel, you're amazing, buddy. I hope you're able to come to San Antonio with Grandpa and Mr. Kunz and Mr. Weiner, and Mr. Stein too. Like, man, if you could go ahead. Well, you met Mr. Stein out in Annapolis, didn't you, buddy? Yep. And so you asked Grandpa when we were out there, you said, Grandpa, I have a question for you. What's your biggest challenge? And Mom didn't ask you to do that. Dad didn't ask you to do that. Grandma didn't ask you to do. Grandpa didn't ask you to do that. You just, like, you were observing and you watched it. And then you asked Mr. Jorge, the same question. And when he asked you, he said, Daniel, that's an amazing question. Like, why did you ask me that question? And you paused and you said, because my grandpa says it's an important question to ask. He thought that was the coolest thing on the planet. So, Daniel, when Uncle Tim and Uncle Ben were your age, they were on with Mr. Kunz too. So, what'd you write down, or do you have any questions for any of us today, Daniel?
I want you guys to keep making money.
You want us to make money? I love it, buddy. Yeah, there you go, buddy. You and Grandpa, we're going to make a lot of money. Do you know what Mr. Kunz says he loves most about money, Daniel?
He's not sure.
He says that he loves money the most because it buys back time. So he can spend time with his wife, he can spend time with his kids, he can spend time with his grandkids. He loves to spend time with those that he loves the most. Don't ever forget that.
Okay.
Because money, buddy, has an addictive tendency to it, where I think it was I don't know if it was Ross Perot, somebody, who's like a billionaire, they asked him, how much money is enough? And he said, just a little bit more. But there's a secret, there's a vaccine, Daniel, to inoculate yourself so money doesn't control you. Would you like to know what it is?
Yes.
It's to give money away. So you have your own business and you're doing great at the age of 7, so you hold people accountable and you're a machine, and your mom and your grandma help you with that, and you got tons of business clients and opportunities. So when you make money, you need to make sure you're disciplined to give it away. My grandpa said, so your great-great-great-grandfather, he died when I was 9, so you never got a chance to meet him. But he said, if you can't tithe, give 10% on $1. Don't deceive yourself and fool yourself. You won't be able to give it on $100 or $1,000.
Okay.
And so, Mr. Stein, watch him when you're around him. Watch him closely, because he's a very, very generous person. Very generous person. He gives money. even when it's hard, when it's really painful, when it's his business could use the money, he could use the money, and I've seen him make sacrifices that probably most people would say you shouldn't make. And he does. I've seen it. Your grandpa, your great-grandpa, Grandpa Boersma, he said when somebody asked him, should you tithe on your gross income or your net income? And he said, what do you want God to bless you on, your gross or your net? Disciplining yourself to save money. So when Grandpa, when I was 24 years old, Tony Davis, the president of Preferred Mortgage Associates, said to me, he said, you know, Mark, you're different from every other employee here. And I said, okay, what does that mean? He says, you not only have the ability to make massive amounts of money, you know how to do it, but you're disciplined where you don't raise your standard of living. You don't buy a really, really nice house. You don't buy a really, really nice car. You're very, very disciplined with your money. Does that make sense, Daniel?
Yeah, you'd be interested to know that they this week Grandma gave them a project to put together their own bank. So they actually put together a bank.
Oh my gracious! That's awesome. And then you can start your budget. Grandpa remembers one of Grandpa's first, youngest memories. I remember probably when I was 5 or 6 years old. And that all of, my siblings and I sat down and we counted our money. And I probably did it through selling Christmas trees. Like Bev Thorne, she'd love this story. And she's part of EC too, so she gets this story. And so Grandpa sold Christmas trees. He was quite the entrepreneur as a little man, like you are, Daniel. Like you're digging in and how do I make money and how do I bring value to people and how do I do all of these things? So you're quite the entrepreneur too. And your brother Trevor is too. And your two sisters, Allie and JoJo, they're going to be entrepreneurs too. And so I remember counting out the money and sending it to California because that was everything that was regulated. And somehow in California we got just a little bit more interest rate. And I remember us doing that as a family, counting it out. And I thought, this is so cool. I get to save money. There's so many stories, Daniel, that Grandpa has about saving money and working hard, being a really, really hard worker and saving money and giving. Grandpa loves to give money away. It's so cool to give away a ton of money.
They already know, honey.
Does that make sense, buddy?
Yes.
Cool. Anyone has any other advice for Daniel?
Do you have any more advice any advice you want to ask about?
Our light is dripping water right now.
I didn't get that, Rosanna.
Don't worry about it.
All right.
It's fine.
It's cool. He's a double expressive, Tom. He is quite the little man. He's really cool. Katrina, is Lily on?
Yeah.
Lily, how are you doing, sweetheart? I can't hear you, honey. Can you get a little closer to the phone?
Yeah.
I can hear you now. So are you making good choices or bad choices today?
I'm sorry.
Okay, if you make bad choices, what happens, honey? You don't know? There's bad consequences. Can you say bad consies?
I can't.
Say bad consies, Grandpa.
I can't see Grandpa.
Yeah, honey. Yeah. baby love. Grandpa loves you so much. Like, so much. And if you make bad consies, like when you come into Grandpa's office and Grandpa's on the phone, what do? You go, shh, Grandpa's on the phone. And so Lily, she lives locally, and so we get to see her a lot. And she learned at the age of probably, I don't know, maybe 14 to 16 months, that when she comes into Grandpa's office, if he's on the phone, she puts her little finger up to her mouth and says, shh, Grandpa's on the phone. And she and I are doing a 10-video series on the secret about time. And it's part of Grandpa's Magic Couch. And so she already understands good choices, good consequences, bad choices, bad consequences. The other day, she and I were having a date, and she loves strawberry shortcake, and I went to put the DVD in the DVD player, and it wouldn't work. And I'm like, what's going on here? So I, get down and I look in, and there's popsicle sticks in the DVD player. Tom, is that the coolest thing in the world? I mean, I'm not saying that I had that same philosophy with my 7 children, but as a grandpa, I just started laughing. I mean, I tried not to, because I'm like, be serious, Mark, this is a teachable moment. So I'm like, honey, I said, honey, we can't watch, strawberry shortcake if you go ahead and put your popsicle sticks in the DVD player, honey. And she's 2.5, and she looks at me with those big blue eyes, and she's like, blue eyes, Grandpa, you have blue eyes, and I have blue eyes. I'm like, you got to be kidding. Like, man. And I said, honey, if you do this, it's a bad choice. And she looks at me, and she cocks her head, and she says, bad choices, bad consies, Grandpa? Like, it's just, man, I love being a grandfather. Alan, Nancy, anything that you have that you'd like to share?
Yeah, we have a question for Tom. The question is, so Tom, we've been in search for someone to basically run the operation, general manager, for years, and we just seem to not be able to find the right person. And just curious, what recommendation or suggestions would you make?
I assume, knowing Alan, that you've got a pretty detailed job description, which spells out what the person has to do. Is that correct?
I'd say yes, pretty comprehensive. Yep.
Okay. Now I would go back and make a list of the traits, personal traits, the core values you'd like to have them have, or the, what's the atmosphere of your company, if you can describe that on paper. And I would then take those two things and combine them in a ad. And I'd also think about it from the standpoint, one of the best ads from a recruiting standpoint that I got from an old mentor of mine decades ago. Asked me one time, I said, what's the best recruiting ad a real estate broker could have? And he says, you walk out into your company and you take a look at all of your agents and you say, if I could fill my office with with this one person, and then you take them to lunch and you sit down and you say to them, tell me what it is you love about your job. And then you just shut up and listen. You can record it to be better. And then when you get through, you go back and you, even if it's grammatically incorrect, and you say, if you would like to feel this way about your job, call whoever. He was a psychologist by trade. And he said, and that's why it's important that it has to go in even if it's grammatically incorrect, because somebody's going to read it and it's going to walk into them, and they'll be able to say, yeah, that's how I'd like to feel. So I don't know if that helps you at all or not, but that's just an idea.
Yeah. Tom, what if we don't have that person that we could, do that recording?
Is there somebody in your company you could grow to that?
Too soon to say. I mean, possibly, but...
Well, let me do it this way. If you're looking at your people that are working for you from the standpoint of could they run the company, I agree with you. If you're looking at your people from the standpoint of how alike me are they, that's a different view. Whoever that person is will be the person you can teach the company to.
Okay.
Does that make any sense?
Alan?
Are there competitors? And I know the business that you're in is pretty exclusive, but are there other competitors that may have somebody you could pull away from?
I'd say not in the same type of business that we do, but in that kind of luxury, yes. There are, in that luxury market, it's possible to look at other industries in that luxury realm.
Yeah. Or even look at other companies that you manufacture and install, right?
Yes, we do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So look at other companies that manufacture and install. Managing those kind of processes pretty much, I would think, are the same, even though the product is a much higher level and much more luxurious. The fundamentals that it takes to manage a company like that, I got to believe probably 90% of them are going to be the same.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Hey, Tom.
Yes.
It's Alan. So I'm curious about your experience. You spent a lot of time in a very large company, and I don't know the size of the company that you're in now, but we've looked at people from large companies in the past, and there's actually somebody that we're looking at interested now. They're from a very large company, and how have you found that people from large companies, are they able to make the transition to a smaller, more entrepreneurial company?
I think that it's probably more difficult to go that way than it is to go the other way. To give you an idea, the company I work for is headquartered out of Hamburg, Germany, and they've been in business as long as Century had been, and so in Europe, they're kind of the de facto MLS for the luxury end of the market. To give you an idea, we actually have a gentleman in England who is a castle specialist. If somebody has the opportunity to lift a castle, then we connect them up with this gentleman, and he tells them, what has to happen to lift the castle for sale. So it's a very large company there. But when I joined them here, my real estate company in San Diego was doing about 3 times of what the company was here. It was basically a startup in the U.S. So coming from what I was used to go in the direction you're talking about, what I found is that what really helped me is that when I was looking back as to what I would have liked to have done with Century 21, but couldn't because it was so large, not that I couldn't, but it would have been much more difficult to do it because it was so large. I now have the ability to, or hopefully have the input to the people who made the decisions to help build this company so that we overstepped a lot of the downsides that we had with the larger company. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, it does. That's good, and point that out to people might help them see some opportunities that maybe they're not seeing without that.
Yeah, when you've got somebody coming from a large company to a smaller company, the things you have to remind them is the things I talked about. We don't have the same amount of people that to get the job done. So that means that not only are you going to be managing, you might also be working, doing some of the stuff. Two, the dollars are not endless because large companies are either publicly owned or have bank accounts that are not endless, but at least they have the money. They can do the things faster than apply the money faster than you can in a smaller company. And time is a big one. Every minute kind of counts when you're in a small entrepreneurial type of operation.
Right.
So, Tom,
I'll keep my eyes open for you. Excuse me. I'll keep my eyes open because we kind of deal in the same marketplace. We are a small boutique. Are you familiar with Sotheby's Real Estate?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's our only competitor. So we kind of deal in the same kind of luxury market. We're more boutique type of operation. We're never going to be big. We're only looking to be in about 450 markets in the U.S. So, and we're geared basically to the luxury marketplace. For instance, we have as opportunities. We have a private aviation and a yachting division within the organization. Why? Because the people who have the money to have their own jet or rent their own jet or have their own yacht are the people we want to list their homes with. So it's a revenue, so it's a lead generating source for our resale business.
Yeah, makes sense.
Tom, do you have any suggestions, like in San Antonio? Paul is leading up the success of that event. Jorge is hosting the event. Paul's leading up the success of it. Alan and Nancy are planning on attending. I think you had said you put that down in your calendar. I guess there's a question for, Tom and Alan and Nancy. What do you guys think about trying to go after that level of business person for San Antonio?
I'm not sure I understand what you're asking.
Alan and Nancy, do both of you?
Well, I think that having been to many of the mastermind events in the past, they tend to attract, I'd say, startup folks, and some of them aren't, real super high level. And so I think what you're saying is that retailer the event so that it's trying to draw in and deal with issues that are important to people in the market that maybe Tom and I deal with.
Correct.
So how would you go about that?
Well, I think the biggest thing, and I mean, this is where the three of you know far better than I do. But I think the venue has to be different. That's number one. I think the marketing has to be different, number two. I think if Alan and Nancy are speaking, if Tom's speaking, if we could get Bev to speak, Paul speaking, we've got the speaker lineup. So the speaker lineup, the quality, the delivery, the understanding, so the quality of the speakers there, the venue's not. with the sponsorship, we could get the venue where it needed to be. Probably. It's a little tight. I think the quality of the material, the intellectual property, I think, is without question. It'll intrigue the most brilliant person. Like, they'll be like, holy smokes, I've never seen anything like this before. So I think that's there. So I think it's the venue, the marketing, and maybe how it's put together. I think, Tom, like what you and Alan and Nancy, you guys come from, I don't know, seems like humble beginnings. And so you guys don't mind being in the room with people who, are not going to be, at the, I don't know, whatever level whatever you say, however you articulate, like you guys don't mind.
No, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you don't care. And you don't care how many people show up. Like
we all breathe the same air and put our clothes on the same way.
Right. But I think maybe a lot of there's a lot of people in that area that also are like the three of you are, but there's a lot of people who are not. And so
it's all relative. Every community has up, middle, and down.
Right. So Alan and Nancy, would you guys want to participate in, a high-end event, or not so interested?
Yeah, no, that'd be fine.
Nancy?
Yeah, that'd be fine, Mark.
Okay. Tom?
How are you defining high-end event?
I don't know. If they own a yacht or a castle or a private plane.
It's going to be a lot harder. I believe it's going to be a lot harder to get that kind of individual into wherever you're having it.
Agreed. Does anybody know what the secret is to go ahead and get them in?
The children.
Yep. I think it's the children, or probably the grandchildren. Because as soon as you get grandchildren around, everything changes. Everything changes. Everybody becomes like equal. Like everything, these really polished people get down on their knees, they play, it's the grandchildren, the grandchildren are just the key, but very few have a business event that they go to with the grandchildren. And I'm not saying that's how we attract them, but they're interested. Like Tom, you said, the tears come a lot faster now. And so, you do realize, like Paul, congratulations, Paul, he just found out that he's going to be a grandfather. And so, there is something about being a grandfather or grandmother. There's something about that goes ahead, and I don't know.
Hey, we've got to jump off.
Okay, thanks, Alan, Nancy. Appreciate it. Happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you. Paul?
If I don't know, but I do know that the demographic of Austin, which is just less than an hour probably away from San Antonio, and the demographic of San Antonio are dramatically different.
So Austin would be better?
If you're going, I don't have all of the data on it,
Okay.
but if you're going high end, probably because that's the capital of the state,
Okay.
and you got a lot of companies that are headquartered out of there.
Okay.
But I think San Antonio is a great place to do it.
Okay.
I do. But that's up to you.
Yeah. Paul, thoughts you have?
I'm still trying to wrap my brain around what you're perceiving. I mean, I get the castle and whatever, the yacht, the plane guy that you've been talking to. I am trying, I guess I tend more than other people to paint a glass ceiling when it comes to the uber rich. I think Tom really kind of captured that. We all breathe the same air. There really, everybody has challenges at every level. So I guess I'm limiting myself by my own thinking. Like, they don't have problems like we do. Of course they do. So I'm trying to get out of my own way before I can answer.
Have you ever read David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell?
I am reading the other one. I have it.
Okay.
I have not read it.
So Malcolm Gladwell is
Mark,
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. I guess I would prefer to help people who are struggling.
Yep.
And are there some that are just ready to tip to success, or some that are just thinking about going out on their own.
Yep.
Or people there. I think they need more help, and I think that for the most part they're more open to it than somebody who is extremely successful. And I agree. I think the kids are the only way to, not the only way, but one of the best ways to get them. But I don't know that.
Well, in David and Goliath, Tom, have you ever read that book by Malcolm Gladwell?
I think so. I've read most everything he's done, so
okay.
I think I probably have. But
so in that book, he talks about the really super wealthy and how it's harder to raise children. They have a harder time raising children if you're really super wealthy. I don't know the statistics, but there's probably a higher statistical probability they're going to have some type of mental illness and or drug addiction and or suicide. And there's not the help for them because everybody thinks, oh, they have all the money, they can find access. But so I agree with you, Tom, from a business perspective and from a kind of life, but from a relationship perspective, husband, wife, children, raising children, I think they're in a harder situation because they never know who's trying to help them. They think like everybody who's trying to help them is always after their money or influence.
Well, I'll give you a true life example as to how I kind of view the super wealthy. First of all, I don't think they raise their kids. I think nannies raise their kids, and I at least know that from the fact, at least one family, because my prior sister-in-law was a nanny from basically birth until marriage of the kids in this house. Extremely wealthy people. If I gave you the name of the company, you'd know it right off the bat. And it was interesting that when one of the daughters was getting married, the daughter actually wanted my then sister-in-law to walk her down the aisle, not her dad.
Yep.
Because she had the relationship with her.
Yep. Well, and I know a gentleman in Michigan, and he had a niece who did the same thing for one of the founders of Amway. And this young man that she nannied went ahead, and when he went into college, and he played lacrosse tournaments all around the world, they would fly her even around. It was like she's like a big sister or a mom, you know, and so they often, that is not unusual.
Yeah. And when they had a ranch up in Montana. The kids and the nanny flew in a separate private jet from when the parents got there. And it was the first time I had ever heard of play date. And I asked them, I mean, this goes back at least 3 or 4 decades now. And I said, what are you talking about? And she goes, we have to make, to the neighbor, one way or the other, we have to make play dates because the estates are so big that it's not like just walking out your door and going next door.
Right.
And that they're usually surrounded by walls, so they have to actually walk out on the so in essence they make time to bring the kids over one way or the other to play with the other kids, and then at a certain time they go back.
Right.
And it was like, that was so foreign to me.
Well, and this is, as I've studied it over the years, the first generation of wealth is so busy building the wealth that, you know, it's just all consuming for them. The second generation,
the second's busy spending it.
Right, and and they wipe it out. So when you look at, so I believe that my grandchildren will be billionaires. The intellectual property that I have been blessed with, all it's going to do is take getting into the right vein, the right conduit. I mean, when Peter said on that leverage call, Mark, this is so foreign in corporate America. They don't even have context. Like, it's a whole different language. It's a whole different operating system. Like, they can't even comprehend it. That's when I said, oh my gracious, I didn't realize it was that good. And so my grandkids, I think, are going to be billionaires. And
there are very few people. In fact, I don't know of any other person, and I've met a lot of people in my career that, well, for instance, you sent me an email and said, just outline these 5 things. And within the next day, you sent back a whole outline of how this process fits into everything. I've never met anybody. That's why it's always interesting to me to get on the phone with you and learn. Every time I'm on, I come away with something new. Even with something that I've done almost my whole career, I'm taking away from what we did here today, and I've got some now new things that I think I want to think about and then decide how I present this process.
So
Hey, Mark?
Yeah.
Or Tom? Here's a different spin on affluent. Because the 1% of wealth in America, there's a huge divisive line between the uber rich and the affluent. So having an event with affluent people, I mean, you guys are affluent. You're not necessarily uber rich. You could be. Mark, you're going to be an enigma forever. You seem like a pauper, but you travel the world. So if we spin that on its side, and I'm kind of piggybacking off what Tom said, because I agree, what I enjoy about these calls, what I get off on is hanging out with smart people. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I don't necessarily want to be the stupidest person in the room. I love the energy of smart people. So if we spin this on its head and try to have an event that attracts smart people where we all energize each other. Is that a possibility?
So it's interesting because Emily, so Life Masteries Institute has the 4.1 million database that they're working on. They got 19,000 people, I think, in a database from a 30-mile radius of San Antonio. Sent out an email saying that we're looking for outliers. One guy out of 19,000 people went ahead and called her. She had a couple conversations with him, connected him to me. He's a seventh-generation Texan. Has multiple ranches. And so what he was
interesting that what I found with Texas people, especially people that you just discovered, they are probably the most down-to-earth people I've ever met, because they understand what a day's work really is.
Right.
Now, they've come in from outside of Texas and bought the ranches, so they're city folk running ranches, different story.
Right.
But if they grew up in Texas, working the ranch when it was a farm, and then built it to a ranch and then acquired other ranches, different type of individuals.
Yeah. What was interesting, I don't know his age. I'm guessing he's in his 60s, maybe 70s, guessing maybe 60s. And I asked him, I said, so, hey, George, just curious, if anybody could help you in any area of your life, what would you love help on? And he named 3 names of people. He had 3 guys' names, and he had their first name and middle name, and he said, I would want somebody to find wives for these 3 individuals. And he gave their first name and their second name. And I said, oh, are those your 3 sons? He's like, no. I said, are they your 3 grandsons? He's like, no. I said, who are they? And he said, they're my future sons.
Wow.
I said, are you married? He's like, no. He's like, there's 6 women, and he owns his own company in kind of aviation military. He invented a car when he was 17 years old that was all plastic. And some people from Detroit came to him and said that if he continued down the path that he was traveling, he would visit Jimmy Hoffa. His dad, when he was 12, and they were on one of their ranches on a hunting trip, his dad said, son, I want to share 3 things with you, and no matter what you go ahead and remember I say, don't forget these 3 things. And he said, I'm trying to remember. One of them was, I'm trying to remember, one of them was, cash leaves no trail. 2, he said, you have a personality that's so irritating, you can never work for somebody else. And I forget what the third one was. So this guy, he and I talked for 90 minutes. I mean, it's unbelievable conversation. It's just, so to your point, Paul, I think you're onto something about smart.
So you have Netflix?
Yep.
Mark?
My kids got it for me.
Have you watched Inside Bill's Head?
The first 2 episodes, yeah. The third one I haven't yet, yes.
Well, the third one is really interesting.
Is it? Okay.
When you see what he has put together, and I guess basically is waiting to see how the trade decisions come down out of China. But I thought it was a number. You know, here's an uber rich guy.
Right.
Was number one. He's been in the top three forever, and the way that he thinks and how, you know, when it's like when he sets his sights on something, there's no
right
turning back.
Right. When his want is different than other people's want.
Yeah, it's just
well,
bigger.
You want to know something? Have you both read Outliers? Mark, I know you have.
Yep.
Yes, I have.
So what Outliers taught me is that these guys didn't get there by a freak of nature. It was, you know, how they described it, or Gladwell did, opportunity coupled with money, which created the opportunity, you know, and then, you know, the deliberate practice. He had access to the computer lab. He had access, you know, to blah, blah, blah. They were given these incredible opportunities that other people don't. And the deliberate practice was like that goosebumps just talking about it.
Didn't he say that they had to invest 18,000 hours or something like that?
Yeah. Huge, yeah. But you can't do that. But so the guy, you know, growing up in the inner city will never have that opportunity. So they can never achieve that level of success. So where would Bill Gates be if he was born into a middle-class family? We wouldn't have.
I don't believe your statement. I don't believe your statement you just said. I think every person has the opportunity, especially today, because there's so many ways of getting. If they had the desire to do it, they can do it. I don't care where anybody who lives in the United States.
Tom, do you have any idea? Do you have any idea, Tom, how much desire is instilled within children?
I imagine I was one at one point.
So I agree with you, Tom. I do. I agree with you, but I also agree with Paul in that there's, like, when you look, like, I've never met anybody more intentional in raising children than I have been. And I'm more intentional with my grandchildren than I am my children. I'm getting to them younger and faster. I mean, Daniel, when he was 5 years old, we were putting shoes on and something. I said, "You're old enough to do this, buddy." He said, "Grandpa, I'm lazy." Like he was proud of it. Man, I was all over that situation.
And I totally understand it. But when I think there was a time when maybe if you were born into a certain area or to a certain demographic, that you really didn't understand all the other things. Maybe you were so sheltered that you didn't understand what was going on out maybe on the other side of the track, so to speak. But with technology now and with TV and with, you know, phones and all this other stuff that's sitting out there, it's impossible not to understand that there's something better, I believe.
Yeah, well, Tom, I agree with you today. Access to technology and everything else, but we're talking about an environment that created the jobs, the Michael Jordans, the Tiger Woods, those people, when back then it cost a fortune to have, computers were incredibly expensive and computer labs were incredibly
So in a quantum world,
expensive.
Paul?
Say again, Mark? I agree with you, Paul. From early on.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I'm saying today.
Yeah, agreed. 100%.
All an individual child has to see is something that on TV or on their phones, because most of them have them now, even the extremely poor people, or just something is going to. I want that, and they go for it, and I think the ability to do it now is unlimited to what it may have been earlier on.
Absolutely. Tom, there's a little strip mall a mile away. There's a little storefront called Code Ninjas. 5-year-olds, 6, 7-year-olds. So they're teaching coding to 5, 6, and 7-year-olds. Coding.
I don't know. I want to be respectful of you guys' time. Tom, how much you got?
I've just got a few minutes, and I've got to go.
Anything else, Tom, you have?
No. You've got all I got.
Paul, anything else you got?
Yeah, I have one more question for Tom.
Yep.
Tom, Mark has been haranguing me forever to get out of corporate America because I am truly mismatched.
All right, real quick here. Let me go ahead and just wrap this up here. So, in the internalization model and the psychology of people, there requires an awakening and then taking ownership and then working hard, smart, leveraging all of that, and then caring about people. And so hopefully you all that are listening to this, have had a quantum thinking moment, have internalized this. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to connect with the individual who invited you, or you got the 2 phone numbers, do that. And always remember, we can accomplish so much more together than we ever could on our own. God bless. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.